I'm now joined by Adam Giambrone from the Toronto Transit Commission. Welcome to the summit.
Thank you very much.
Tell me about what the Transit Commission does.
So the Toronto Transit Commission is responsible for building and operating as well as maintaining all of the metros, trams and buses in Toronto. So it moves about 1.6 million people a day, and on a yearly ridership about 900 million people moved by the Toronto Transit Commission.
And how does that compare to the total population of Toronto? Is it a significant proportion who are getting mass transit?
So in terms of North America, it's the third largest next to Mexico City and New York. And from the whole Toronto area, it's about 6 million people in the Toronto region. Our area is a subset of that, usually the downtown, because we don't operate commuter trains. So we have about a population area of about 3 million people.
Any new technologies within these mass transits that are helping reduce energy emissions? And
when we talk about new technologies, we have invested in new technologies like hybrid buses. So we have a huge hybrid bus fleet, about 800 plus buses, about 40% of the bus fleet. We're looking towards energy capture from light rail vehicles. The new subway trains all allow regenerative braking, which allows them to store energy, pump it back into the network, therefore lower their energy contribution. Because of course, transit is green in the sense that it gets people out of cars, but it doesn't necessarily mean its operations have always been green. But in many ways, we're going back to the future, and most of the things happening in Toronto right now in terms of expansion is based on the streetcar or the tram that first rolled into Toronto in the 1860s with horses, later electrified, and that is forming the basis of our transit expansion, new light rail lines going out across the entire city of Toronto. Well, you know, the interesting thing about Los Angeles is people always think that there's no transit in Los Angeles, and I certainly had to be disabused of that thought a couple of months ago when I first came to LA for another meeting. But LA actually has a fairly decent light rapid transit system. It's got some metro. What it needs to do, I think probably everyone agrees without being an expert in LA, is it needs to build on the actually fairly decent solid base it's got and get people out of cars, which is the same thing we're facing in Toronto. How do you get people out of the single person vehicle and onto mass transit?
that's right. If you could just extend its reach with the rail here, that would be much appreciated. You're here at the summit. What do you hope to achieve by being here?
Well, there's two things. First of all, we had a chance to present our transit options in a summit today at 10:30 in the morning. So that was an interesting opportunity to both present what Toronto's doing, and then of course to learn what's happening in places like Mexico City, which is putting a big push on alternative transit, cycling as well as public transit, and then also just out here in the many different sessions in terms of hearing about new technology. Talked to somebody about electric buses today. You know, we've heard a little bit about it, but we've learned a little bit more, and a chance really to sit down and talk with people who are trying to solve the same problem, how to reduce your carbon footprint. And in my domain, that's within the public transit sphere. There's obviously huge other areas in terms of how you deal with energy retrofits, how you try to look for alternative fuels. Our job is to take the energy footprint from public transit, which is in the Toronto's case, about a third of our entire carbon emissions come from the transportation sector, and how we can get that number down, well, as low as possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking with us today, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.